Hello, everybody. Welcome to Inspire, a series brought to you by Finverse, the Financial Universe. I'm your host, Vishal Krishna. I bring you some very wonderful, in fact, really wonderful people to come and inspire you. So today I've got Abhijit Roy, the founder of GoldenPi, or the co-founder of GoldenPi. GoldenPi is all about debentures and bonds. We'll ask you the question, what are debentures and bonds? They allow you to invest in these instruments so that you can get great returns, more than 9% sometimes. It's better than your FDs and whatnot. I'll ask Abhijit if that's what he's doing. Abhijit, welcome to the show firstly. Is that what you do?
Thanks for having me on the show.
Is that what you do? Fixed income, bonds, securities?
That's right.
Yeah?
That's right.
Have I got the numbers right?
Yeah, that's right. What essentially we do is we make alternate fixed income assets like bonds and debentures, very valuable bonds, become readily accessible and investable through an online platform, basically simplifying the entire investment journey for individual investors.
It's interesting. We'll go into that journey soon, but I want to start with your history.
Okay.
You are a civil engineer who's never built a building.
That's
right?
true.
And this series about inspiring people to change, transform, right? And continuously inspire themselves to go and upskill. So how did that happen? How did civil engineering happen and why?
Yeah. So, that's like several years back, right? When I joined IIT Kharagpur, right? So tough competition, what eventually transpired as what I would get as a department of choice, most favorable choice would be civil engineering. So it's pretty much by default mode that was there, right?
Did a lot of your neighbors take civil engineering at the time? Is that how your parents pushed you to, or did you just
Well, that was a conscious choice, There was some amount of glamour around the civil engineering and building bridges and large buildings, all that stuff, which was there, which definitely looked promising. And that's how civil engineering happened. But then eventually, you plan with something in your life, and then you start realizing that probably there are other things which one should explore, and that will make the individual happy. I think that's basically been a big change in my life.
I like your journey a lot because you went from being a civil engineer to becoming a software engineer in Infosys.
Yeah, that's true.
How did that
that's
happen?
True. That's true.
I would have never believed that, but how did that happen?
Well, see, it's pretty simple, right? So during the college placement seasons, right, companies would come in and, the civil engineering companies essentially would get scheduled towards the later end, right? And Infosys came in.
Yeah, just like BCom students on the end, civil engineers also at the back end.
I mean, big ones, the good companies would come in way towards the end, right? And Infosys came in pretty early on, right? And it was a big brand and, big campus and all that stuff, right? The good things that they speak about it. So I thought, let's give it a shot, right? Let's just sit down for the interview. And it just went from one stage to the next, And it's so transpired that the interviewer was also a civil engineer, right, in Infosys from another IIT, right?
So he could relate to you.
Yeah. So I think that definitely earned me some brownie points being from the same department. But that's how it happened.
How did you crack that interview?
Well, it's a lot about logical reasoning and, basics about maths and, certain other logical questions. So, yeah, it just happened in the flow.
Did you code?
I did. I have written large pieces of code and I have shipped those code for product companies. So after Infosys, the rest of the companies essentially have been core product companies, right? And that's been a great learning experience, right? Infosys was the seeding point for software per se, right? But it was into services. Then I transitioned into products, right? And that was a great learning experience where you start looking at, you build something from the scratch, you take it to millions of users, you see them, evaluating your product, enjoying using it, cursing you for all the wrong things that you've built in over there. It's a very steep learning journey and, of course, a very satisfying one.
The interesting aspect is not many people realize that you went from being civil engineer to software engineer to now management graduate. You went into IIM.
Yeah, I did.
So many rapid transformations. How do you manage to stay awake, man? I'm just asking. How did you? Is it because you like reading, learning new concepts all the time? How did that IIM thing happen?
So I think there's some sort of a deep-seated wish in me that I really wanted to start something. To be honest, right? So did take a shot at starting something in 2007, right, with my current co-founder.
Oh,
right?
you did something?
Yeah.
So
we
this is not
planned.
your first
This
rodeo.
is not the
You've
first.
done it before.
Yeah. I mean, not done in full scale. It was still at the planning phase, right? But in notebooks and boards. That's it. Doing some amount of scribbling, and then, but it didn't really finally translate into a business, right?
Why do you think?
I think I was not prepared at that point of time, right? The idea was there, but idea is not all to start a business, right? There are a lot of other moving pieces which you need to have in control before you start up something, right? And I think for me, the biggest thing was being able to look at a business from a 360-degree perspective, right? So I am helping you over there tremendously. I mean,
structure yourself.
Yeah. To understand that, for business, it's not just the business strategy. People, eulogize that thing, that business strategy, and the product ideas is the sole thing. There are a host of other components which should be put in right to be able to start a company and scale it up, right? Scale it up gracefully, right? Like you would have operations, you would have sales, you would have organizational structure, you would have HR management, right? Each of these are pretty critical elements which you need to have together to be able to build an organization and scale it up, right? Starting can be definitely with idea and a bit of execution, but then these things need to be there. And I think this education at IIM Calcutta definitely helped me in putting those moving pieces together. And luckily after that, I joined in a fintech company, right? I was very excited about finance early on. I mean, I started my investment right after I joined Infosys. My dad advised to me, you need to make some investment, right? And he told me that, I said,
so
where to do? Where to do? He said, anything that you want to invest in, but invest. So I thought the easiest option is FD at that point of time, right? So and during those days, FD would give you anywhere between 14 to 15%, right? Very handsome returns, right? It was a darling investment of all Indian households, right? Cut to chase, in 2015-16, when I was working in Yodlee Incorporated, which happens to be a fintech company in the account aggregation space, right? And they're catering to the US banks, the major US banks. We're all using it, right? I got to witness how this fintech space was shaping up drastically and dramatically in, the US markets, right? So there were companies. Equities. Like Venmo, PayPal, Stripe, Square, right?
Mostly on the payment side too.
Yeah. A lot of, revolutionary products were built, being shipped out to customers, right? And there were a lot of good reviews about that. And Yodlee was serving a lot of these fintech companies, right? So I could witness it firsthand. But then in India, definitely not much had still yet started. It was mainly the payment companies like BillDesk, right, or EasyTap in 2015-16. Early days of Paytm, right? So given that, I was there very much into that fintech space, the clock was ticking, and, something was telling that probably it might be the right opportunity to start up something here in India.
You read my mind. Why get into fixed income securities? It's something that nobody looks at. Everybody knows an FD. But they don't know what debts and debentures, bonds and debentures are. Pardon me, especially AAA and AA. Although it's part of their subject, not many realize that that's a market waiting to be studied or taken, or in terms of investing. Why did you choose this?
I'll just step back before answering that. Just to make people aware that the debt securities market in India stands at a staggering $1.6 trillion.
$1.6 trillion in India alone.
In India alone.
That's a fact for all you finance students. You should know it. And not many people know it, by the way. $1.6 trillion in India.
In India. Worldwide, it's the largest financial market at a value of $95 trillion. Whereas the equities market worldwide is close to $80 trillion.
So it's more than the equities market.
Okay. The debt market is way larger than the equities market. In India, right, it's slightly smaller than the equities market, right? And
because we still haven't explored the good parts of debt yet. And I mean, I think corporate bonds and everything are just taking off right now.
Right.
So I think, would you see debt overtaking equity soon? Of these debentures and bonds?
It might. By 2025, right, the rate at which, the debt market is growing in the country, and the government is also having with very sharp focus on developing and, widening and deepening this market, I wouldn't be surprised if that eventually happens, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the reason you started this?
Well, not really. It's from a very personal experience. Remember I told you about the FDs, right?
Yes.
So my parents were also putting their money in FDs, and in 2016, my dad had a requirement to, move his money out of FDs into something, because the FD rates had come down to 7%, right? And he wasn't really happy with that. He was looking for alternate investments, and I wanted to help him out. I was looking at various other options that's available, and I came across bonds and debentures. Now, from my MBA days, I knew theoretically what bonds and debentures
all of us know
Yeah, that's it. Some problems that you solve in Excel sheet and you submit for submissions, right? That was all that I knew about it. But when I moved to this part of investing, I realized that it's a different ball game altogether, and very few people would be aware about it, right? So the harsh reality started, hitting on that. Me knowing this asset class, right? Still, I was having a lot of difficulty in accessing bonds, making investment in them. I eventually invested his money successfully over there at 10.5% interest, and he was very happy about it. But then the realization
It was not
struck.
democratized, right?
It
was only
wasn't.
available to a few traders,
Absolutely.
not people at large.
Yeah, to traders, large institutions, and HNI and family offices, right? So they would be the ones who would have access to this. But individual investors like me, we didn't know about it. We didn't know where the market was at all. It was totally opaque. So that looked like a potent problem to be solved, right?
Yeah.
And
why take the risk, Abhijit? Why take the risk? I mean, you're being paid well at the previous company. It's serving fintechs across the world, right? And why move? Why move and become an entrepreneur? Must have been a difficult choice, or you just had to do this?
It's a calling that you get, right? Once I was doing that work, right? And, life was very smooth, very well predictable. And I could see the next 20 years what I'm going to do, right? But then, there's another part of you which starts kicking in. I mean, 2016, I already had around 14, 15 years of experience, right? Wherein you start feeling that probably I have seen the bits and pieces together, and probably if I do something, I can do better, right? That, equation starts getting in, and you start, evaluating, is this now, I have an idea, I want to do something. I also have a very stable job, stable life, and smooth course ahead, right? And you start evaluating whether you want to jump out, thinking about the great things that you can build, or you want to stay safe and, move ahead. And that's where, the decision kicks in at one point of time, that probably if I step out and I start doing something, I'll do better. I'll do really good stuff, right? Which probably in a corporate structure, there would be restrictions, right? The responsibilities would be, distributed across multiple people, huge amount of decision making and all that stuff. Things wouldn't move fast. Whereas if I start off something, tomorrow itself I can,
so you're
just
a product
start
guy.
working on the
And
idea.
when you start up the company with your co-founder, selling the product is something that you have to do yourself. Talk about your first sales experience, or a sales champion, person who championed you. Said, "Oh man, I like your product. I'll help you guys." Was there such a person?
Oh yeah. So
how did you learn sales also? Please tell us that.
So I'm not sure if I am a salesy kind of a person, but I think I have been able to,
convince people,
put things well before people, right? So the communication helped a lot.
Yes.
And something which comes very naturally to me is to articulate and lay things out very transparently. That's something that I have realized from my college days itself, right? To lay things out transparently, then even your professors start taking confidence in you.
Correct.
Right? So the same thing kicked in over here. And the first sales that I did was with that of the investment of a very close friend of mine. So he also runs a startup over here, a second startup. So he sold off his first company, it got acquired, then he started his second startup, and he had some cash and he wanted to deploy in fixed income. And he was tired of FDs, right?
Okay.
He wanted something else which will give better returns. And I explained the concept to him. He liked it, and then he deployed his money. So that's how it started.
Was he convinced about the idea? And also, a lot of the bond traders at the
Right,
time. They would
right.
have said, why do we need a platform?
Yeah, yeah.
And that must have been an initial challenge too.
Not just bond traders, even other investors, right? A lot of them basically were still enjoying the high benefits of FD rates, which they would have created 4 or 5 years back, and they were getting 9%. 2017, still it wasn't down for them, to 7%, because earlier FDs were continuing. So we heard comments from people like, why are you even wasting your time on this, right? This is a rich man's game. Only institutions and people with a lot of money and knowledge will invest. Why do you even want to do it, right? And it was tough, definitely. A lot of challenges over there in trying to convince people logically. Because at that point of time, there wasn't anything like GoldenPi or an online platform for bonds and debentures that people could look up and say, okay, this is something similar that you're doing here. There's nothing in India, actually. There were bond institutions who were catering to institutions, corporates, and HNI clients.
For individuals like me.
Nothing for individuals, right? So that made the equation all the more hard.
I want to bring in a tougher question on, students in finance. A lot of India is theoretical.
Yeah.
I mentioned that too. And you also alluded earlier that in India, not everybody can get jobs. They have to become entrepreneurs.
Right.
So in the context of your business, you tell us why it's important for people to reskill, why it's important to know things like debentures and bonds, because you never know, they may become traders themselves, independent traders. They can manage treasuries of companies if they know finance, and help those companies invest in people like you, right? I don't know if GoldenPi as an institutional business, but they could do all that, right? As people who can upskill themselves. But what is the problem with the country? Too theoretical in its education today?
I think, that's for sure. The component of having the real world exposure, wherein the skill sets required for job employability is pretty much, needs a revamp, right?
Did you see that after you started hiring?
Well, we hired the right set of people. I mean, it has always been our effort. But during the hiring process, we have realized, the resume looks good because probably somebody helped them in creating the resume and they got shortlisted. But during the interview, the reality sets in and we realize that the person has really not upskilled himself or herself, and is not up to date with the new things which are there in the market, right? So that becomes relevant. So upskilling and reskilling, these are two different things, right? I know something and I'm trying to learn the newer things in my field. That's upskilling. I know something, but now I want to do, I was doing X, I want to pick up the skills for Y. That's reskilling, right? People should have the flexibility to do both, right? If you're passionate in what you're doing, you should upskill. And if you're not happy with what you're doing, you should definitely look at reskilling, right?
I want to allude to another thing. Infosys trained you. That was amazing, right? And then your career went towards products. Then you went to management, learned how to structure an organization. Would you say you got lucky? And we should do the same with people in BSc, BCom, BA. They need to learn these things. Somebody should train them. Should we invest in training or should they invest in training themselves? Would you say take a job when you're in undergrad or something? Is that viable today for any subject? Even if you're an engineer, you need to take a job when you're in your undergraduate program. Is that something that you recommend?
I would definitely recommend, to take a job. Why not? Because that'll give you the real world experience, right? And you start learning the tricks of the trade while on the floor itself, right? But along with that, just working on your problem set that you have at your company, right, might not be enough for you to go to the next quantum leap in your career, right? Wherein this reskilling and upskilling thing definitely becomes important. So, even I'm upskilling myself and reskilling myself every single day, right?
What are you studying now?
It's quite a few different topics, right? Mainly around finance, the different kinds of financial structures that are possible, things that are happening across other financial economies, right? And what are the things that's kicking in.
You also mentioned that a good finance person in a company means the company is going to be run very well in the long run. Do you believe in that?
Certainly. One of the most unglamorized positions, but very vital positions in a company is managing the accounts and finance, for sure, right? Because at the end of the day, right, it eventually comes down to your P&L and balance sheet, right? From business perspective. Building the product, scaling up to millions of users, in B2C or in B2B serving other institutions, that's there. But then as a business, this is one of the key pillars that one needs to have intact, which is like,
You know, I have a lot of respect for you now that even though you're a founder, you've raised money, you're selling the product, you know, to obviously retail investors, right? You are reskilling yourself. That's phenomenal. So you are saying you're a constant reader of things. And what inspires you generally?
So, I love to read about autobiographies and biographies, right? So that gives me a lot of
What are you reading
inspiration.
currently?
So right now I'm reading the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin, the things that he did,
I heard he was an inventor.
Yeah, he was an inventor, but very few people know he was also an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Yeah, he had his own business which he had set up, right? And there were quite a few which he did very successfully. He was a natural, salesman per se. So
I think all entrepreneurs should be naturally good at sales. Or it's difficult, no?
I think so. I mean, at the end of the day, if you have confidence in your product as an entrepreneur, that automatically translates to you being able to speak confidently about it to the person in front of you, right?
Yes.
And that's what translates into
I
the other
agree.
person taking your
I
product
agree.
or service.
So Benjamin Franklin, who else inspires you?
So I definitely have, read about Ratan Tata's, life, the way he actually took forward the Tata
He came
business.
back from the US and had to take over.
Yeah. It was a big leap that he did for the entire
What's the big
Tata
leap
business.
for GoldenPi next? What's next for you?
So we certainly want to move ahead further, serving from just people who are being able to access bonds and debentures through online platform to way beyond that, right? So it's say 34% of the investors or people would be there on online platform accessing that. There's a huge Bharat beyond that, right? Over 70% who probably are not still investing online, right? What would be the way to reach out to them to be able to contribute in a small way so that they're able to save, they're able to earn more and have a better quality life, right? So that's basically the big vision.
Okay, I promise you that I'll ask you what a bond and debenture is. I hope you've not Googled it, and I hope you've gone to your textbooks and seen what it is. What is a bond and a debenture, and why should they start investing in it now?
Yeah. So let me explain this thing with a bit of an example, So let's say, I want to borrow some money from you. Right?
Yes.
So let's say I borrow, say, 20,000 from you, right? And given that you know me, right? So probably you'll not charge me an interest. You don't earn anything. I take it from you at the end of, say, 3 months, 5 months. I return it back to you. Now, in your place, put a corporate who needs to raise money to expand its business, right? And I'm willing to, give some money to him, to that corporate, essentially. The corporate is going to promise that I'm going to take this money from you. I'll return it back to you after its usage. And while I'm holding it, I will pay you interest on that money every single year, right? In exchange of this arrangement, the corporate is going to give me certain instruments or securities which are termed as bonds and debentures.
Yes.
So in short, a bond or a debenture is a loan that any entity, be it the government or the state governments or the corporates, would raise to expand their business, take forward the operation that they're running, and in return they will pay interest to the investors.
That's fantastic. By the way, guys, the Anglo-French War in the 18th century was financed by bonds
and debentures.
And the Rothschilds financed it.
Yeah.
So bond market is certainly bigger than equities.
Yeah.
So you should go check out GoldenPi. You should check out his business, and you should perhaps invest. And you could start it as little as 10,000 rupees.
Yeah. Yeah.
So go check them out. The company is called GoldenPi. By the way, I'm Vishal Krishna, your host of the Inspire series, brought to you by Finverse, the financial universe. Go check out our product, download, subscribe, like. If you have any more questions to ask us, we'll get Abhijit to answer us. Thank you, Abhijit, for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.